Hello, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lowell Parking Study Highlands, Acre, and Back Central Neighborhood Public Meeting. We're going to allow a few extra minutes for people to join and we'll get started soon. Thank you for your patience. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lowell Parking Study Meeting for the Highlands, Acre, and Back Central neighborhoods. My name is Christine McCall, and I'm the Director of Economic Development for the City of Lowell. I would like to remind everyone of the rules for participating in this meeting, as well as remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Next slide. We have interpreters who are translating the meeting tonight into Spanish, Portuguese, and Khmer. If you require these services, please click the interpretation button on your screen. It is the globe icon, and select which language you wish to hear. At this moment, I will ask all English speakers to please select English as their chosen language. This will allow you to hear translated non-English comments during the Q&A. Next slide. You can view closed captions by clicking the closed captions feature and selecting from the options below. Show subtitle will display a caption at the bottom of the screen. View full transcript will display the meeting's audio transcription in a window to the right. Next slide, please. You may use the chat button to submit a typed question or comment at any point during the meeting. We will be monitoring the chat during the presentation, but ask that you hold the comments and questions for the breakout discussions that we will be having later in the meeting. If you have a technical problem, please share your issue in the chat feature at any point during the meeting, and we will respond as quickly as possible. I'll note that all project team staff members are listed with City of Lowell or project team next to their names in the participant list. And this is a reminder to everyone that the chat is visible to everyone, and we encourage you to keep any comments in the chat respectful to other attendees. Next, I'd just like to introduce Terry Ryan, the parking director, who I know is on the Zoom, and any other city staff. I didn't see you when you come in, but next I'd like to introduce Michael Clark from the consulting firm Stantec, who will provide more details about the study and review the city's parking resources.
Great, thank you, Christine. On screen, we have an agenda for tonight's meeting. We'll be doing a quick round of introductions. Then we'll walk through the study's purpose and goals, conduct a neighborhood overview of data that's been collected for Acre, Back Central, and Lower Highlands, walk through the study's next steps, and finally transition into a question and answer and breakout room session. Before I begin the presentation, we want to get a sense of the language preferences for the discussion portion of the meeting. We are able to offer breakout rooms in up to 4 languages, so we want to find out what rooms are requested for tonight. You can see a poll up on your screen now. We'll leave it up for a few moments for people to respond. We'll leave this up just for a moment or so. And let's close out. So you can see with the results, we do have a request for a Spanish breakout room. We'll be arranging that while the presentation occurs and be able to accommodate that once we are ready for the breakout discussion. So as Christine mentioned, both herself and Terry Ryan are here from the city. Stantec Consulting is assisting the City of Lowell with this parking study. I'm Michael Clark, serving as a project planner, and we also have Jason Schreiber as the project's manager, and Liza Cohen and Amelia Casey as project planners here in attendance tonight. And from Regina Villa Associates, handling some of the public outreach responsibilities, we have Reagan Checchio and Amanda Poggenberg. Next, we'll discuss the study's purpose and goals. So the city is using a housing choice grant from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development to undertake this study. And some of the purposes of this study that we've outlined here include analyzing existing parking inventory and utilization. This is both for the downtown area as well as within neighborhoods. Studying parking-related policies and management. Comparing the parking supply and demand from the data that's been collected to the land uses present in the city. And coming up with strategies that better enable car-free lifestyles. We have a number of goals outlined for the study as well. At our community presentation on February 2nd, we walked through each of these goals in a little more detail. The slides are posted on the project website if you want to learn more, but I'll quickly walk through each of these goals. First, we're looking to align parking standards with economic development goals. Next, we're looking to update the parking system to reflect citywide goals, such as those that have been studied as part of Go Lowell or Sustainable Lowell 2025. Third, we're looking to improve the parking experience, whether it's as a resident or as an office worker, retail shopper, any type of parking experience in the city. Next, we're looking to reduce parking congestion and promote parking availability. Next, adjust parking pricing to better manage demand and system costs. Next, streamline the city's residential parking programs. Next, incentivize greater use of the city's parking garages. And finally, determine future parking needs to support growth in downtown. This slide shows the study's timeline. We've been working with the City of Lowell since the fall to collect data and conduct neighborhood evaluations. Also included in this study is an operations and management evaluation, which we are starting to get into in earnest this winter. Next, public and stakeholder outreach efforts. The star on the slide here indicates this first round of public feedback. We had a community meeting on the 2nd, and this is the last of 4 neighborhood meetings. We'll have another round of public outreach in the spring. And finally, the draft and final parking plans will begin to be developed soon, and these will be presented as part of the 2nd round of public outreach in the spring. Now we'll go through a neighborhood overview of our parking data. And before I dive too deeply into this, I do want to note that Lowell is obviously a big city. To count all of the spaces in the city was not a feasible effort for the study. But fortunately for the neighborhoods under consideration tonight, we have counted a number of the parking spaces. So we're happy to be able to present full parking inventories for Acre and Back Central, as well as part of the parking inventory in Highlands. We'll note that we are interested in feedback from anybody in these neighborhoods, whether your street was collected for data or not. So please don't take data not being collected maybe in your neighborhood as an indication that your feedback is not noted. It definitely is. But first, I want to start with Acre. The map on the screen here shows on-street and off-street parking assets in Acre. The yellow shows metered parking, which, as you can see, is clustered closer to downtown. The green notes residential permit and reserved on-street parking. This is parking that is reserved for a specific user, such as a residential sticker sign. Orange indicates time-limited on-street parking. This is free parking that is 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or some other time period. And purple represents unregulated parking. This is parking that is open to all. Off-street parking resources, the dark blue signifies public parking provided by the City of Lowell. Light blue represents restricted parking. This can be public parking, such as that associated with the library, but this is parking that is restricted to a specific use. So you can't park your car there and just go wherever. Finally, I'll note that you can see some green dots in this slide. This represents where we have data for residential placards. These are the green and white signs that you can post in front of your house to signify the parking space in front of your property for yourself. The parking inventory for Acre, there are quite a few parking spaces here. We counted roughly 14,000 spaces. Of these, just a little over 10,000 are off-street spaces. Of these off-street spaces, 274 are publicly available. Of on-street spaces, we counted a little under 600. We counted roughly 240 time-limited on-street parking spaces. And finally, we counted a little under 1,000 reserved on-street parking spaces. That's the green on-street parking. We were able to tabulate roughly 250 residential placards. And finally, there's roughly 2,500 unregulated parking spaces in Acre. Next, we'll walk through some utilization data. So we'll caveat the data that's shown here. Obviously, given the conditions of the past year, collecting parking counts in 2020, we felt would not be a practical representation of parking in the city in a typical condition. So what we have done with our utilization counts is use Google Earth imagery from a Tuesday in May 2016. This is the most recent weekday available, to determine what a midday count would look like in a normal operating condition. You can see the map here for Acre. At midday, we're seeing roughly 1/3 of spaces utilized and 2/3 of spaces vacant. This includes both on and off-street spaces. You can see in the map here, colors such as orange and red indicate where parking is very heavily utilized, whereas the light blue indicates where parking is underutilized. Next, we'll walk through overnight parking counts in Acre. I'll emphasize here that this is an estimate. We used location-based survey data to approximate travel activity in neighborhoods relative to the midday counts. So these maps are an estimate. If something looks off, we would love to hear that feedback because we do want to represent this as accurately as we can. As you can see, our estimate notes that we have a little bit more utilization in the overnight hour, but the majority of spaces are vacant. However, I will emphasize here that you can see a lot of light blue for off-street parking. And in Acre itself, you see a lot of greens, purples, oranges. This indicates that on-street parking in the residential aspects of the neighborhood are pretty well utilized. Next, we'll walk through these same data for Lower Highlands. This is one part of our neighborhood that we were able to collect data for. We understand this is not the entirety of Lower Highlands or Highlands. As you can see, the majority of on-street spaces are unregulated parking. And we have some off-street parking that is primarily restricted parking. There are some spaces that are reserved on-street parking. And you can see some of the green dots that signify placards on homes. That indicates the space in front of that house is reserved. But for the purposes of our data collection, we are calling this unreserved parking since that placard isn't necessarily permanently tied to the street. This shows the total number of parking spaces in Lower Highlands as just a little over 7,000. I should correct myself, in the area that we collected data for. Of these, a little over 3,000 are off-street spaces. Of these, only 65 spaces are publicly available. The rest are private. And there is no metered on-street parking that we found in this neighborhood. There are 81 time-limited on-street spaces, 53 reserved on-street parking spaces, and a majority, a little under 4,000 unregulated parking spaces. However, we do note the 372 residential placard signs that was provided to us by city data. This map shows the midday utilization in Lower Highlands. You can see that there is a little bit less utilization in Lower Highlands than there was in Acre, about 30%. Total utilization was 29%. You can see a lot of light blue for on-street spaces. Next, we'll show our estimate for overnight parking. As you can see, we estimate a majority of spaces are utilized in this neighborhood in the overnight hour. You can see a lot of orange, green, blue that indicates majority utilization of these blocks during overnight hours. And much like in Acre, light blue signifying underutilized off-street parking lots. Finally, we'll present our parking inventory for Back Central. Much like in Lower Highlands, you can see a number of on-street parking spaces are unregulated. We also have quite a few time-limited on-street parking spaces shown in Back Central, and the blue indicating many restricted parking that is off-street, as well as some public parking. You can also see the green dots in this map as well. The total parking inventory for Back Central is just a little over 4,000 spaces. Almost half of these are restricted off-street spaces. And then we have 81 publicly available off-street spaces. We only located 10 metered on-street parking spaces in Back Central against 112 time-limited on-street parking spaces. There was just a little bit of reserved on-street parking in Back Central, 35 spaces. We were also provided with a little under 100 residential placard signs. Meanwhile, there's roughly 1,800 unregulated parking spaces in Back Central. The midday utilization for Back Central, much like the other neighborhoods, we're showing roughly 1/3 of spaces as being utilized and 2/3 of spaces as vacant. You can see a lot of the on-street parking spaces, especially along Central, are vacant, largely vacant in the midday hour, with some higher utilization seen as you get closer to downtown. Our overnight estimate, again, sees more parking in the neighborhood. 52% of spaces we consider to be utilized, estimated to be utilized. You can see a lot of on-street parking spaces, especially along the Central Street corridor, are approaching complete utilization, 90 to 100%. At this point, we'll discuss next steps for the study. In the next couple of months, we'll look to finish our downtown parking profile. A lot of these conditions were discussed at our neighborhood meeting, our community meeting on February 2nd. We'll conduct an operations evaluation of the parking system, including infrastructure conditions and financial management. We'll finish our residential parking assessment, including our hotspot analysis of permitting and an overall evaluation of permit programs, and include recommendations as part of a final parking plan. But before that final parking plan is released, we'll develop a draft parking plan and share these findings as part of our second round of public meetings in the spring. So it'll be one community meeting that we'll be holding, as well as a city council presentation. The final parking plan is expected to be released in early summer. Finally, we have some online resources if you'd like to engage more with the study. We'll have this up on a slide at the study's end as well. The website and survey links can be found at lowellma.gov/parking study. We have had a survey posted for about 3 months now. We'll be closing it in the next week. If you're interested in taking the survey and haven't already done so, we encourage you to do so. You can email the project email address at parkingstudy@lowellma.gov. And finally, the study is using Go Lowell's Facebook page, facebook.com/GoLowell. At this point, I'll pass it along to Reagan Checchio from Regina Villa to handle our question and answer and breakout sessions.
Thanks, Michael. So first I want to apologize. I think the chat feature was limited to only messaging the host at the beginning of the meeting. That has been addressed. And I know that those of you who sent your comments to Amanda, she will share that with the whole consultant team. There's a question in the chat right now, is the presentation available? The presentation for the larger public meeting has already been posted, and I believe these slides will be posted soon, if I'm not mistaken. All the neighborhood ones will Aurora made a comment in the chat that I just saw the corner of my eye. So that the, yes, it will be posted online, but not yet. But we will be doing that. I do want to make sure everyone has plenty of time in the breakout rooms. The small group discussions will last until 7:20. We'll give a 5-minute warning before they go. Once you're in the breakout rooms, you'll be able to have small group conversations about some of the material that has been presented so far tonight. Each breakout room will have an assigned group leader who will introduce his or herself and lead the conversation. We will have 3 breakout rooms this evening, 2 English, English 1, English 2, and 1 in Spanish. You will be able to choose your own room. So we can achieve a balance in the rooms. I'm going to suggest for those of you who would like to be, those of you with birthdays, let's say January through June, if you could choose English 1 if you would like an English breakout room. And then if you want July, if you were born in July through December, we'll try English breakout room 2. Of course, those of you who would like Spanish can go directly to the Spanish room. Hopefully we have a balance of birthdays tonight. The breakout sessions will not be recorded, unlike the main meeting, but the group leaders will be taking detailed notes that will be incorporated into a written summary of the meeting. So after, it's going to be about 20 minutes now, I'm looking at the clock. Once the breakout sessions are over, you will then rejoin the main session where we can share what we've learned. So that being said, I think, Amanda, if you can launch the breakout rooms and people can choose which session, which room they would like to attend. Again, I'll note that if you want an English breakout room and your birthday is January through June, we'll suggest English room 1. And if your birthday is July through December, we'll suggest English room 2. And we can see if we have a balance of birthdays in the group. If anyone is having any issues joining a breakout room, we can also randomly assign you as well. If you would like one of the Spanish rooms, the breakout room. So there should be on the lower bar of your screen, there should be an icon that says breakout rooms, and you should be able to choose there. I think, and if you are looking for the Spanish breakout room, if you could type in the chat, you could privately message Amanda or myself. We can assign you. We know we had at least one participant who wanted to join that room, and we can randomly assign everybody else this evening if you're having any issues joining the room. I know Zoom technology does not always look the same on everybody's screen. Okay, so Cindy, I see you're having some issues, so I think we can assign you to. We'll assign those of you, if you need help in the chat, we'll randomly assign you. Amanda, I don't know if you're seeing in the chat. Yes. Perfect. So I think some of the rest of you are still perfect. Looks like there's still one more person or a few more people who need rooms. If you could let us know in the chat which rooms. Great, welcome back, everyone. I hope the breakout discussions were good and informative. I think I will invite the group leaders to give a brief summary of the discussion. I will turn to Liza first, if you want to give a brief overview of what your group discussed.
Oh no, I was worried you were going to do that. So we had a really great conversation and heard a lot of things that were new to me, which is the whole purpose of having these meetings, which is great. A lot about enforcement in residential neighborhoods and how, in particular around the university, that can be an issue, but also how folks coming in and taking up spaces that are meant for residents can create all kinds of issues, ranging from limiting plowing on streets to, making it difficult for visitors to come and see their friends. I think we had an interesting discussion about, maybe a need for a garage or some sort of centralized parking supply in the Acre in particular. Folks who feel that downtown isn't that practical of an option for them during a snow ban, as well as folks who think that that would help unlock some development opportunities in that neighborhood. And also some discussion, which, we've seen in person when we go to Lowell, of cars that park on the sidewalk and block routes for people walking, and why that might be. And, sort of how that creates a hazard in various ways. And maybe it's easy for able-bodied people to deal with, but folks who use a wheelchair or another mobility device might have challenges with that. And I have a lot of other notes, but I think that covers a lot of the common themes from what we talked about. So thank you so much to folks who participated. It was really, really great.
And before I turn to Jason, I will note that all of the group leaders' detailed notes will be captured in the meeting summary that we'll be producing. Jason, anything high level from your group that you want to share?
Sure. We actually spent a lot of time on the first topic that Liza touched on, which is the impact of the university, particularly on the Acre. Some concern about our data really not capturing the amount of students that are seen on the street, which we will go back and look at and use some of that same LBS data we use to simulate nighttime to make sure we're capturing that effect. But ultimately, much of a discussion about what opportunities there might be to make that work better, whether that's working with the university, changes to the residential program, enforcement, opportunities with supply, adding on street supply, but still trying to make that done in a safe and equitable manner. It was a really good conversation, and nobody is angry at the university, but certainly want to try to figure out a creative way to deal with those spillover impacts.
Thank you, Jason. And Amelia?
We had a great conversation as well, and it was very focused, which is always nice. So my participant lived in the Acre area, and our conversation focused a lot on safety for pedestrians, for residents, also too for parking. So she feels that a lot of people in their neighborhood don't necessarily have confidence to park for fear that their car will be clipped or that the street is too narrow. We also talked about, kind of piggybacking off of what Jason said, the impact that the university will have once it opens up, and how the demand will kind of impact the neighborhoods. We also talked a lot about how the city is growing, and that certain parking policies may need to accommodate that growth, especially related to the residential parking program, and also kind of touches upon event parking as well. Once summer kind of comes into full swing, properly accommodating for those peaks in parking demand.
Great, thank you. Sounds like great discussions were had this evening. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to Christine.
Thanks, Reagan. I just want to say thank you all for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts. If you have any additional comments or questions that come up as you go about your day tomorrow, you can always email us at parkingstudy@lowellma.gov. If you have not already, please go online at lowellma.gov/parkingstudy to fill out our survey. Send it to your friends, to your neighbors. It's going to be closing on Monday. We want to hear from you. In addition to the survey, you can find all recordings of every public meeting we have hosted to date on that same site. And this meeting should be available on the website by the end of the day tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining us. We are grateful for your time and participation. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.